Hello, and welcome to the Halifax Regional Municipality's International Women's Day celebrations. My name is April Hubbard. I am a white woman in my 30s with shoulder-length brown hair. I'm wearing black pants, a black and white striped button-down shirt, and a black blazer. And I use a manual wheelchair to navigate my world. I'm an advocate, an arts administrator, accessibility consultant, and a proud, queer, mad, disabled woman living in Shabuktuk. I recently authored a report with Eastern Front Theatre outlining barriers to participation in the performing arts in Nova Scotia and made recommendations for change. I'm also a circus artist who proudly shows my body without hiding its differences, with the goal of challenging assumptions and normalizing the presence of disabled people in our everyday world. I'm excited to be your host here today.
Good morning and welcome everyone to the International Women's Day 2022. My name is Iona Stoddard. I'm currently the counselor for District 12, which includes Timberley, Lakeside, Beachville, Clayton Park West, and Wedgwood. And I must say that this is a very diverse district. We have people of all generations, all colors, all abilities. I'm joined this morning by my co-host, April Hubbard. So hi, April, nice to be here with you. Before we begin, it's very important to acknowledge the land we are on. I would like to invite HRM's Indigenous Advisor, Cheryl Kopeg. I'm sorry, I forgot how to spell your last name. Yanu, to lead us through a land acknowledgement. She's also joined by Elder Deborah Isan, who will share the teaching with us this morning. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddard and April for the introduction. Gwe, Waliexipuk, Ninda Lewisin Cheryl Kopage Jiu, Wedabexi Sipanagadi, Jalasi Jabuktu Mi'kma'ki. So hello and good morning. As Councillor Stoddard said, my name is Cheryl Kopage Jiu, and I'm the Indigenous Advisor for the Halifax Regional Municipality, as well as a counselor for Sipanagadi First Nation. I would like to acknowledge that the Halifax Regional Municipality and the events of International Women's Day is happening and occurring today in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and ancestor land of the Mi'kmaq Nation. As we acknowledge International Women's Day in Jabukto, which is the Mi'kmaq name for Halifax, I would like to share a poem with you called Woman. Woman, may you reconnect. May you remain connected and resilient. May you remain grateful, loving, and honest. May you honor and listen to those who have passed on to the spirit world. May you whisper kindness to those who are standing right beside you. May our lost sisters feel our breath on their faces from all four directions. May the missing sisters inhale our love, capture our strength, and find their way home. I felt it was very important today as a Mi'kmaq woman and a leader to share this with Jabukto today on International Women's Day. These words about missing Indigenous women are incredibly important, and we'll continue to send our strength out to the families and the Mi'kmaq community as they work tirelessly to bring their women, girls, and Two-Spirit people home back to their communities. Walalan and Namultis. Next, I would invite Elder Deb up.
Thank you, Cheryl Walalan. It's my good fortune this morning to not only provide you with an opening prayer, but I wanted to take a few minutes this morning to share a couple of stories with you. One is a teaching and the other one is more towards those women and those individuals who are out there fighting and working hard towards the equality for women and advancement for women. And I'm going to take you back just a few years. I will share that this year I'm going to be 65 years old this year. And so when I think back to the time when I was 17 years old, I was just having my first child and I was in the military, my first year in the military. And back then, a woman, when she was pregnant, she could only take 6 weeks before she was due for her baby to have off. After the baby was born, I only had 8 weeks to connect with my little baby girl before I had to go back to work. It was hard to do that, but back then it was just the way it was, and we accustomed to that, and we did that. And for me, being Indigenous woman growing up, things were done and things were said that we just agreed to it, and we just did whatever we had to do because people told us to do that. But as we move through the years, I have seen an incredible amount of change and amount of work that has been done by women advocates over the years to get us to the point where we're at today. Is the work done? Absolutely not. Are the women done fighting? Absolutely not. And every woman that I see and every woman that I work with and for has the same tenacity and the same power and the same strength to keep moving ahead so that, you know, we see the light at the end of the tunnel and we try to make this road a little smoother and a little better and a little bit easier for all of those young people coming behind us. Each one of us has a responsibility to make a change. And so the gatherings that we do today, the work that Cheryl does as counselor, not only in her community, but here in Jabuktuk, is paramount to smooth that road out. So I want to personally thank each and every one of you who are here today and who are listening. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for being brave to step up and do the work that it takes to smooth that path for our younger women, because they are our future. We have to make that better for them. The teaching that I'm going to share with you before I do the opening prayer to start your day off is called the Strawberry Teaching. And I chose this morning because it's about women. And today is about women. And so I'll read it to you, and I hope that you can find somewhere in your heart and in your mind to connect those two and place yourself where you need to be within this teaching. The strawberry teaches forgiveness and peace. The strawberry is shaped like a heart, and strawberries are known to our people as heartberries. Often referred to as the heartberry because of its shape, the wild or natural strawberry is an important food and medicine in many indigenous cultures throughout North America or Turtle Island. This little plant carries many teachings. Our elders tell us, just as the Ode Min or heartberry is connected to the strawberry plant by a vast system of leaves, runners, and roots, so is the heart connected to all the organs and parts of the human body. The heart is at the center of the human. The heartberry helps us understand the connection between the mind, body, spirit, and our emotions. We need our heart to guide us in order to maintain personal balance. The heartberry also reminds us of reconciliation and teaches us how to maintain heartfelt relationships in our families and in our communities. During the strawberry harvest in June, many communities hold annual feasts, welcoming everyone home and letting go of differences, judgment, and self-righteousness. Many cultures consider the strawberry plant to be a woman's medicine. It is used to teach our young women about creation, community, and love. Our Ojibwe elders teach young women to fast from strawberries and other berries for a full year when she gets her first menstrual cycle or her moon time. During this year, she spends time with grandmothers who teach her about womanhood and how to bring life into the world. She also gathers berries, which she will present to her community when she completes her fast. Hence, she learns how to care for and sustain her people. In Ojibwe, the strawberry represents Gizagahin. Commonly translated as I love you, Gizagahin more accurately describes as I show you that I care. This means caring and sharing from birth to death. When you say to someone, you take on caring for them to the end. So the strawberry reminds us to love someone is an active experience, one that involves commitment. We oftentimes hearing each other tell them that we love them, not in the way that partners love each other, but in the way that you love them as human beings and who they are, and not try to change them. Traditional uses of this strawberry plant is used to treat digestive disorders, skin problems, and to strengthen the uterus during and after pregnancy. The fruit and leaves are an excellent source of vitamin C. So I share that with you today to place yourself in the way that you need to, and to not be afraid, no matter who it is, to tell someone, I love you. In my language, we say gizagahin. And it depends on who you say it to, how the meaning comes out. Miigwech, thank you for listening to me for the teachings. And now I would like to offer you an opening prayer to start off this beautiful day to celebrate our women. If you can, I would ask you to stand. Gentlemen, if you have a hat on, could I please ask you to remove your hat? Ani bushu nanatemakus, indejanakas, nameanganaway anishnabekwe, Bachuana. Creator, we thank you for this beautiful sunshine that you have given us this morning to help ignite the fire in our bellies to move ahead with yet another day. We ask, Creator, that you come into this circle today with these men and women, and also into the virtual circle to help us to celebrate the successes and the way ahead for our women here on Turtle Island and across the world. We pray, Creator, for our loved ones who are sick and need your help and strength and guidance in the days ahead. We pray, Creator, for our women and our girls who are missing and need your help to help us to find them and bring them home. We pray, Creator, for the over 10,000 spirits of those children whose little bodies have been found. We pray that you guide them their way to the heavens with you. And Creator, for those men and women who work tirelessly day in and day out, protecting our way of life here on Turtle Island, keep them safe until their duties are complete. And lastly, Creator, for our veterans and those soldiers who are fighting this war across the Atlantic, we pray that you keep them safe and free from harm until their duties are complete and they return back to the loving arms of their family and their friends. Taho miigwech ahau. Walali, thank you very much.
Malawi. Thank you, Cheryl and Elder Asan. Today's event is brought to you through a collaboration of partners, including Halifax Public Libraries, Transition House Association of Nova Scotia, the Immigrant and Migrant Women's Association, and the YMC Halifax. Funding for this event has been provided by the Halifax Regional Municipality and the Advisory Council of the Status of Women, Province of Nova Scotia. Today's event will be live streamed on HRM's YouTube account and recorded so that you can watch it again later. You will also notice that the American Sign Language interpretation and closing captioning. The first International Women's Day took place in 1911 in Austria, Denmark, Germany, and Switzerland. On that day, over 1 million women and men attended events to show their support. In 1975, the United Nations recognized 1975 as International Women's Day, International Women's Year, and began celebrating International Women's Day on March 8th. If you'd like the source, you could write this down. It's http://women-gender-equality canada.ca/en/commemorations, dash celebrations slash international dash women's dash day dot html. All right, thank you. Though much has changed since 1911, what has stayed is the same in the importance of this day and a time to celebrate the achievements of women and girls and gender diverse while coming together to reflect what barriers need still to be removed to achieve gender equality and to make plans for everlasting change. There are several global and national themes for International Women's Day this year. While those are important, we've decided to focus on a theme that reflects our diverse local communities and the wisdom shared by our collaborators and partners. During our time together this morning, we'll explore the theme, Disrupt and Celebrate, the future of gender equality of women, girls, and gender diverse people in the Halifax region. We will welcome Natteal Battiste as our keynote speaker, sharing stories in an interactive program of people and projects that are advancing gender equality, and host a panel discussion on how the current housing situation is impacting women, girls, and gender diverse people in our communities, with speakers from the community, organizations, and different levels of government. We will also look forward to sharing a spoken word performance by Gael Johnson. These conversations are meant to disrupt and spark dialogue, pardon me, about the complex relationship between gender inequality and the barriers such as ableism, racism, reconciliation, homophobia, and transphobia, among many others, and how they impact people living in the Halifax region. We hope that today's event will inspire you to hope for a better future and learn about the leaders in our community who are disrupting gender inequality and building a more inclusive Halifax region. I would like to invite the Honorable Carla McFarlane and the Minister for the Status of Women's Act, Minister of LNO Affairs, and the Minister of Community Service to share words of welcome to you all. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to HRM's International Women's Day event. The theme today is Disrupt and Celebrate, the future of gender equality for women, girls, and gender diverse people in the Halifax region. First, I want to acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. While I cannot be here in person today, I want to acknowledge and thank the organizers, speakers, and performers at this event. Your voices uplift women and call attention to the issues we may face, and your work inspires me every day. To those attending this event, thank you as well. It is encouraging to see people gathering to celebrate women and how we can disrupt the system to enact much needed change. We will achieve success by working together, different departments and levels of government, community partners, and even individuals. We all have a role to play in supporting the women in our communities. Nova Scotia is home to women of many cultures, ethnic backgrounds, and levels of ability. It is this diversity that makes our province special and strong. The Office of the Status of Women recognizes this diversity and has, over the years, supported many projects to advance all women in Nova Scotia. But we still have a lot of work to do. It will take all of us standing together to create a future where all women and girls are safe from violence, where they can thrive and live up to their fullest potential. Throughout my life, I've always endeavored to be an advocate for women. I'm always looking for ways to disrupt the status quo and celebrate the work of the women around me. Therefore, I am pleased to recognize so many amazing women in this province doing incredible work in their fields. Just this past December, Nova Scotia had 5 women appointed to the Order of Canada. They embody the spirit, resilience, and achievement of women in Nova Scotia. I also want to celebrate the women we don't necessarily hear about, the women doing the work in their communities without the public recognition. Their commitments are strong and their hearts are big. They too inspire me every day. Women who are disrupting the gender bias and inequality in their workplace by being in non-traditional fields and trades, women fighting for a seat at the table, women running small businesses, even when facing barriers. All these women inspire me to do better. To hear about the barriers they face due to their gender identity, their race, their sexual orientation, their age, or disability, I want to be a voice for all these women, and you all help me. Please enjoy these performers and speakers today. Be inspired by them to see where you can enact change and disrupt gender inequality in your own lives. Please be safe, be kind, and happy International Women's Day.
April speaking. Next, I'd like to welcome the CEO of the Halifax Public Library and our host for today, Osa Ketchen.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Halifax Public Libraries today. We're in Paul O'Regan Hall at the Central Library. And so after years of not being able to gather, it's nice to begin this process of coming back together as a community. And no better day than International Women's Day. We've celebrated this day here since the opening of the library. So on behalf of Halifax Public Libraries and all the amazing women I work with and the amazing women on the library board and the amazing women on municipal council, much to celebrate there, I want to welcome you all today. You know, International Women's Day is such an important day. It's a day where we celebrate what's been achieved. It's also a day where we challenge our community. We challenge our community not to settle too much into celebrating, but at the same time really pay attention to what needs to remain or what needs to be changed yet in our community. You know, and I pause often. I started my morning this morning with a cup of coffee and thought about, okay, what do I hope will change in my lifetime? And you know, although more than half of women who graduate from, or half of university graduates are women, again, great achievement, we still end up earning significantly less than our counterparts across all job sectors, at every stage of our career and every discipline. That needs to change. 83% of victims of police-reported domestic violence are women. Sexual exploitation and violence against women, that remains one of our greatest shames in this country. We women remain underrepresented in leadership roles and elected positions, and the needle hasn't moved really as fast as it should. So my mother left her home in rural Sweden when she was in junior high to seek an education. She was a strong feminist. She became an engineer in 1954 when not very many women did that. And you know, when I reflect with her, she's shocked that not more has changed during her lifetime. So we have to keep moving. So we've just come through an interesting couple of years. And what's been really interesting about COVID is many of the high-level public sector positions, the individuals who cared about our collective good health, they were women. Theresa Tam led our country through one of the greatest challenges of our generation. 5 of the chief public health officers in provinces were women. The chief of public health in Northwest Territories was a woman. And in many less visible ways, women on the front line of healthcare and community responded to COVID, and they made tough decisions about how to keep our community safe. And around the world, what's really interesting is countries led by women showed the greatest success in pandemic response. We know how to care about each other, and we applied that capacity. But women have also been at the center of the pandemic in less positive ways. And it's well established that women have been disproportionately negatively impacted over the past 2 years. And women in Canada are bearing the brunt of an economic downturn. So women have held many of the low-paying jobs that were affected by the pandemic and have lacked job security and protection and have been at a higher risk of exposure to infection. Women working from home have faced the challenges of juggling work and childcare and virtual school. And women still overwhelmingly carry domestic labor, which is such a fancy word for doing housework and cooking and laundry and tucking kids into bed, all tremendously important work. And that's impacted the ability of many women to rejoin the workforce. This imbalanced unpaid work and its financial impact disproportionately affects Indigenous women and Black women. And of course, the economic impact of COVID has also increased the rates of gender-based violence. So it means that women, particularly Black, Indigenous, trans, and racialized women, are less likely to be able to engage in their communities in all the ways they want. So the pandemic has intensified these inequities. And if we want to recover well, we need to really think about a gender forward approach. So taking an approach that takes particular care of women and gender diverse individuals to address gender-based violence, to create economic security for women, to empower girls, to have inclusive leadership. If we remove gender bias in the design of our buildings, the way we build our cities, the way we live in community together, our whole community becomes safer and healthier and more sustainable. So it turns out that improving gender parity improves life for everyone, right? Women who are safer and well supported and are provided equitable opportunities, they don't just forge a better life for themselves, they forge a better life for their children, they forge a better life for the elderly people that they inevitably are caring for, and they change life for generations to come. It's so simple, and yet it's been somewhat elusive for us. So, we get this right and families are healthier and they're better fed, and the women's incomes and savings and reinvestment go up. And what becomes true for women becomes true for families and communities and eventually the world. So when I think back to gender parity and my mother's early observations of it, she said, it's not really just a construct of the 60s when women stopped perfectly coiffing their hair and stopped meeting their husbands at the door in a frilly apron, holding a martini and burning their bras. It is actually all of us working to change our community over time, up to this point and into the future. And in fact, if we change our communities for the better by ensuring equal pay for women and equal representation and affordable childcare and creating a world where women can live free of violence and be taken seriously for their opinions, that's how we could create a more sustainable community, all of us together, for ourselves and for our children and their children and so on. So today we will address some of these issues. We'll think very much about how we disrupt, how we continue. This is a day for celebration, and it's a call to action for continued care of women and gender diverse individuals in our community. And so I'm delighted that we're having this conversation at the library. We want to tackle tough conversations here, and very excited to be part of this morning and look forward to all the speakers to come. Welcome again to the library, and I'm looking forward to a great morning. Thank you.
April speaking. Thank you, Osha. I'm very excited to introduce our first performer of the day. Gylie Johnson is a published author, spoken word artist, community advocate, and arts facilitator from North End, Dartmouth. She has a passion for writing and speaking about inner and collective healing. She's published 2 books, Expect the Unexpected and Afraid of the Dark, dedicated to youth in her community. In 2018, she won the Ancestral Roots Award for the Written Visual Arts category presented by the Delmore Buddy Day Learning Institute. She recently started a job at Dalhousie University as an assistant registrar for admissions and recruitment. Her purpose is to encourage, empower, and educate while creating pathways and opportunities for youth in and around her community. Please enjoy a performance by Gylie Johnson.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here with you today to celebrate International Women's Day with you this year, to share, to speak, and more importantly, to give gratitude to all of those who have paved the roads that we now walk on. May we continue to follow in their footsteps. May we continue to disrupt and celebrate. The first poem that I'm going to start with here is titled Resilient Roots. It's something that I wrote about a year ago around this time, and it's dedicated to my African Nova Scotian ancestors and for their presence in this province. Where are you from and what is your background? Always seem to insinuate a divide. What if I told you your history books lied and that on this land our roots are tied? There's something significant about being an African Nova Scotian. You can feel it when we talk, it's potent. In the country, they say there's something in the potion, because there ain't nothing like a Scotian. Shared language, values, community, and faith. Gathering as a collective, we create a safe space. Understanding the pain of the past as it relates. Even through darkness, our ancestors escaped. So it's confusing when you mix that pride with hate. Resilience embedded in the same soil that was damaged. Our ancestors somehow managed to grow, flourish, maintain, and keep. Some of them even worked on the same concrete. We drive, walk, run, and pass without any reminder of who they are, what they did, and why it's special. All of that begins to play on your mental. Why am I proud to be an African Nova Scotian if Nova Scotia is not proud of me? Structural systems to keep us oppressed usually go unaddressed because to acknowledge what was done would mean to take accountability, but that same accountability would have to come with some humility, humanity, and hope, to view our perspective through the real scope. But as Black people, our experiences are often stripped in silence. Our cries for help get conveyed as whining, and then they try and say that you're not trying. We are forced to thrive in employment and educational systems that were not created for us to succeed. And when we ask for better opportunities, that gets conveyed as greed. How dare we demand equality? We attend schools where the curriculum doesn't connect, where we often experience neglect in the form of lack of respect, surrounded by classrooms that lack culture, diversity, and inclusive material to comprehend, the constant microaggressions towards Black women, and the label and stereotypes of our men. And for our white friends, we see the rules bend. And the part that hurts is it doesn't matter how hard you work, you'll still be unqualified, underrepresented, and underpaid, regardless of those foundations laid. Our communities are over-policed, targeted, and under surveillance nonstop, a disconnection with the cops, while violence and sickness plague the elders and the youth. Our resistance helps us to continue to push through. Breaking barriers by building bridges our youth can cross and connect, dismantling years of oppression and neglect. We will one day live in a society where we reflect in all aspects across all boards because we can only accept what we stand for. Rooted in our rich history and rich heritage, ready to honor those who came before us, recognizing the needs of those who will come after us. Where are you from? What is your background? I am an African Nova Scotian from sea to land and land to sea. There's no way you can see Nova Scotia and not see me. The second one that I'm gonna do kind of follows in that same path, and it's titled I Am Because We Are. And again, it's just to give gratitude. And I feel like it's so fitting for International Women's Day to really give thanks to all of those who have paved these paths that now I am now on. I give thanks to the past created before I could walk, to the books written before I could talk, to the stories of the past that led me to light, for all of the victories that lessened my fight, for the ones who knew my beauty before I could see, for the ones who knew my purpose before I knew me, for the one that understands what is hard to convey, simply because they have traveled this way, to the one who knows that my strength isn't rooted in trial, to the one who gives reassurance to my in denial, to the village where everyone has a role to fulfill, to the builders and artists sketched in skill, to the dreamers who never stop dreaming so I could be, because I am you and you are me. a community hub of love and kin, etched in my skin, affirmations of worth to represent all who created the steps and those who will follow, because what is done today will change tomorrow. And the last one that I'm gonna do is from my first book of poetry, Expect the Unexpected. And this one is titled Lotus Flowers, sorry. And I always do this one towards the end because I believe that we are more than the environments that we are surrounded by. And it's really about tapping into that inner beauty and that inner resilience. And so I really like to leave off with this message. Lotus flower. I am the significance to your heart. Never falling apart, I connect with your mind. With both combined, my soul bleeds your purity. My mind craves your growth. I emerge from the depths of dirt, far from hurt, I bloom into a beauty unimaginable, almost impossible flower. Though the soil I come from is in the sling of a swamp, still I rise. I rise into a soul that streams a great significance of spreading strength spiritually. The lotus flower I am, the dirty seed I used to be, doesn't define me. What defines me is the state I'm in after surviving the struggle. You see, it's not where you come from, it's where you end up. Some of the ugliest places create the prettiest people from the inside out. Lotus flower. Thank you.
Thank you, Kylie. That was an amazing performance. I would like to introduce you all to Natteal Battiste, our keynote speaker. Natteal Battiste is a Mi'kmaq and African-American cisgender woman. She's the youngest elected council member for Acadia First Nations. She graduated from St. Mary's University with a Bachelor of Arts in 2014 and has explored careers in finance, child services, and entrepreneurship prior to being elected in office December 2020. A mother of a young daughter, Natteal prides herself in being a leader by example and believes in the concept of transformational leadership as an approach to ending intergenerational trauma. Over the last couple of years, Natteal has started speaking in public and presents the Indigenous resilience, highlighting the importance of unlearning, relearning, and applying Indigenous concepts and history in a way to address and acknowledge the systemic racism and the colonialization mentality in Mi'kmaq. Following Natteal's speech, we will open up the line for questions from you all. You can ask questions via Zoom using the question feature or through comments on the YouTube live stream. Thank you.
Kwe Akweli Exikbu, Deliwasi Natteal Battiste, Delawe Meligiaj. Hello and good morning. My name is Natteal Battiste and I am from Acadia First Nation. Wilaliok. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of today's International Women's Day, focusing on disrupt and celebrate. But before I begin, I'd like to take a moment of silence for the return of 2 of our Mi'kmaq women and 1 Maliseet woman who are currently missing. 1, Marley Morris, age 24, last seen downtown Dartmouth on February 18th. She's approximately 5'5", approximately 150 pounds. You can visit the Halifax Regional Police Facebook group for more information and a picture. My aunt, Linda Francis, age 54, missing since February 28th, 5'5", long brown hair, approximately 140 pounds. Last known contact was on February 28th indicating that she's not well and she's in Kitchener, Ontario. Erin Brooks, 38, missing since December 27th, last seen in St. Mary's, New Brunswick. It's important to use this moment to highlight right now that colonization is gendered, and in short, our women, girls, and to us LGBTQIA+ people are 12 times more likely to go missing than any other race or gender. I love this year's theme, disrupt and celebrate. I actually feel like it's the current path that I'm on. I'm disrupting the system and celebrating every small victory that I get on the way and as they come. So if I'm going to disrupt even this keynote, I have to speak from my heart through my perspective, and thus I cannot let this moment pass without talking about colonization. As you know, the land that we are on is traditionally known as Mi'kma'ki, home to the Mi'kmaq people since time immemorial. But for the sake of placing a timeline, artifacts showed that Mi'kmaq people have lived in harmony with these lands for at least 10,000 years. So let's just take a moment to push past the educational system that normally only teaches us the last 255-ish years and look at how the Mi'kmaq were able to sustain our waters, our land, and our way of living. Pre-contact, our people lived in harmony with the land and the resources as an interconnected system that took in considerations and philosophies such as Naduglement, our 7-generation principles, restorative approaches, all while operating as a matriarchy. Our Indigenous women hold such a vital position within our families, our homes, our communities, and our society. It's our women that you see as water protectors, land defenders, front line in our protests. And prior to colonization, our women participation in our communities was also represented through Women's Council, our grandmothers. Their voices and wisdom were so important when it came to the management of our resources that they chose sustainable chiefs and tribal governments. They are our knowledge keepers. So when colonization happened, it was learned very quickly by the British, the strength that our women played in our survival and way of life. Thus, using the exact same model that they used against their very own women, history showed from the very beginning of interactions with the fur trade, the implementation of using our women to secure trading posts, to enforcing laws under the existing Indian Acts, such as denial of women's status between 1869 to 1985. That one is so close to home for me. My great-grandfather was a veteran. He went to war, just like so many people did around his time. However, because he went to war, he left my great-grandmother home with the children. The Indian agent did visit. They noticed that there was not a man occupying the house, and at that time they removed her and her children from the home. Thus, that's why I was born in Boston, because I then became kind of a moving family at that point. There's so much more that I could talk about, but they removed our identity as women and enforced the patriarchy system that we are still trying to dismantle today. So why do I share this with you? As I navigate through today's society, now in politics, raising a young daughter, and learning how to decolonize my previous teaching, so unlearning and relearning and applying, and operating in a two-eyed seeing perspective, I've realized a few things. I've realized that our society teaches girls from a very young age that they're inferior, that they have such a huge ladder to climb. And although that is true in a lot of aspects, capitalism was created off the oppression of every woman who was a part of it. Whether you are a minority, a settler, a refugee, or an ally, as a woman, if you have any connection to colonialism, you have once in your life have been looked at as less than. I was 24 years old when I finally found the strength in what it means to be Black, to be Mi'kmaq, and to be a woman. Prior to getting into council, I worked at RBC, and I was having a weekly goal setting with my manager. And he looked at me and he said, well, you're a powerhouse, Natteal. And I always used to joke with him, Alex McKenzie, he's the funniest manager I've ever had. But he said to me, you could one day be CEO of RBC if that's what you choose to do. Really, I didn't understand why he was saying that to me, but he said, by being the three most powerful things in the world, as a Black woman, as a woman, and as a Mi'kmaq woman, you hold what it takes to go anywhere you want in this company. I was 24, I'm 29 now. So for the last 5 years, I've started to put meaning behind that. It was the first time that I stopped looking at those three things as being a minority and less than, which is what I was being taught. I have to check a box that says that I'm a minority every time I fill out a form. So I was believing that. I was believing that the system just wasn't designed for me. But in that moment, I found strength in those words. And I started putting meaning behind what it means to be Black, what it means to be woman, and what it means to be Mi'kmaq. And from that moment on, I moved forward, and I absolutely loved my career at RBC. I started being myself, and I did great. I won awards. I was top financial advisor or banking advisor. I loved everything about the job. But I had a child, and I had some time off. And during that time off, I decided that I was going to give it a go and run in politics. And normally, as a youth, I was thinking to myself, that's something I'll do when I'm older. However, I'm young, I have the energy now. So I said, let me just put my best foot forward and see where this takes me. And during my campaign, I sat with an elder, and she said to me, well, Natteal, you're a bridge. And I said, okay, what does that mean? I'm a powerhouse and I'm a bridge. But she said, no, you are exactly the strongest person that I have came in contact with as being a woman and being a bridge between Black and Mi'kmaq people, repairing the connection that we once held with these two communities that over time started, the relationship started to go away because of the colonial system. And at that moment, I realized I was on the right path. It was reaffirming me that as a Black woman, as a Mi'kmaq woman, and as a woman, I am strong in just those three things. But we've been pushed so far away from our authentic being, all women. What we're talking about is hundreds of years of oppression that our women had being bound to being housewives, housemaids, having certain jobs that were the women jobs for us, that we're no longer operating in our truest natural form. We've been operating and existing in a society that wasn't even built for us. And we are now running into climate change issues, war, pandemics, species at risk, low levels of natural resources, amongst living in a fast-paced society driven by technology. Where do we as women fit in?
The answer is we don't. We have to rediscover who we are authentically and how to connect to our natural rhythm so we can live in harmony, interconnected within all races and backgrounds. The economy that we're being forced to upkeep, it's not sustainable. How do we live happy in an economy that has a bottom but doesn't have a top? So let's focus on our happiness. Let's focus on our joy and our legacy and celebrate every small victory in our lives. Did you get a new job? Let's celebrate that. Did you 10,000 steps today? Let's celebrate that. Did you merely just survive the day? Let's celebrate that. Because then naturally our strengths, wisdom, customs, and perspectives are the key to slowing down this disaster that our next 7 generations are going to face. By contributing ourselves in the purest form of who we are, we can show up daily, in tune, at peace, and make those necessary changes that this world needs to see. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Natteal. We've had an incredible morning so far. After 2 years of Zoom meetings, I think we could all deserve the much needed wellness break. For the next 10 minutes, Battiste from the Blue Nile Massage Therapy will guide us through a head, neck, and shoulder self-treatment, followed by a deep diaphragmatic breathing. If you want to participate, stay tuned. If not, please feel free to use this time to move your body in other ways or step away from your computer. We'll resume.
After this.
And we will resume our program after the wellness break with story spotlights and panel discussions.
But before that, if you would love to enter in your questions now on the YouTube or in the question box, I will take 10 minutes to answer all questions that are being brought forward.
Thank you.
April speaking. So I have a question for you, Natteal. I'm wondering if you have any recommendations on how all of us as community members from various underrepresented communities can come together to support each other's voices.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. The way that I look at things when it comes to us being as women is that if we, going back to operating in our natural forces and our natural rhythm, then we're allowing the differences of what we have amongst each other to just naturally be. We can support one another, respecting and looking at ourselves as equal no matter what. And it has to start with us. Women have to start looking at each other as equal, as powerful, no matter what any challenges or differences or background that they come from. And I think once we can start doing that with each other, we set the bar of how other people will treat us. So it does start. It starts with one person changing their perspective and opening up their mind to operate in a way where they are being their truest self, but accepting everyone else in the form that they come in. And when we do that, that's when we can start making those changes and moving forward.
The election, I mentioned that there weren't enough women on council, and a lot of the residents agreed with me. And I spoke to a lot of little girls who were kind of excited to see that I was running. And I told them, I said, reach for the stars, follow your dreams. Don't let anybody say you can't.
Yeah, exactly. And politics it's hard.
Yeah,
Not only do we need more women in it, we need more youth as well.
exactly, exactly.
Do we have any more questions here or?
Hi, Natteal. Hi, Counselor. Thank you both so much for that wonderful conversation. Question for both of you. I was really excited, Natteal, to hear that you're a mom and in politics. And so I'm curious if you can expand on or provide recommendations about things that we can do to remove barriers, to encourage youth and younger mothers to, take that leap and consider politics and consider making a difference.
Yeah. It's funny because I just thought of, there's a counselor also over in North End Dartmouth, and I had seen her at a immigration ceremony or Canadian citizenship ceremony. And I told her my plan, I was going to run as counselor for my reserve. And the first thing she said was, perfect, we need more moms in politics. Like we could be that little club together. And so what I can say from my perspective is politics is not easy, but it's worth it. And there's such a huge gap that's being created with politics where we have older people who are in politics and we don't have a consistent age gap representing everyone that's there. If you want to truly be someone who represents your generation, that's the step that we need to take. We need to make sure that we show up in politics and run for politics, especially as youth and especially as women, but we need to do so in our natural form. It's maintaining your voice in politics and just pushing forward in your creativity and your thoughts and your passion, and never losing sight of that is the biggest key when it comes to this society that we're operating in. But we need the differences at the table. We need different people at that table that comes with different ideas, different ways of thinking, and really from different backgrounds. As an Indigenous woman, I spent half of my life living on reserve, and now I'm living off reserve. So I try to use that to my advantage of understanding what it's like when you are on the reserve and when you are off on the reserve. And I can say when you're off reserve, you feel forgotten. So it's making sure that you amplify those voices, but still remembering exactly all the struggles and everything that you went through when you were on the reserve. So taking your story and pushing it to the forefront is really important, and apply that into everything that you do. And then as a mom, I feel like when my daughter was born, that was that driven step that I need to say, like, okay, well, I can't push this off till tomorrow. Got to do it now. Because she is the key to the next generation. She has to grow up in this society, and she has to take on anything that we leave behind. So when I make my decisions and I think of future economic development and sustainability, I think of it in a way of saying, like, will this help her classmates and her generation and the generation that she's going to birth and those to follow? And right there, that's the biggest motivation that I can push forward with her.
Well said. I agree with everything you said. I have two granddaughters, and both of them I try to instill their history, my history, in them. My grandson actually had me speak on Black History Day, one of the Black History Days, and he was so proud. And I said to him afterwards, I said, it's good. It's really good to be proud. I said, I am a woman. I'm a Black woman, and my voice needs to be heard, and I want you to be heard as well. Just because you're young does not mean you don't have a voice. I'm very proud of HRM because we do have gender parity now. So that is the first time in HRM history. I'm also proud of HRM as I am the first Black woman of color that is on council in HRM. We've come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. I'd like to see a little more representation from the other groups. I'm really proud to be a Black woman. And when I'm speaking my own truth, it resonates with people. You know, you don't need to have a degree or be somebody that you're not proud of. Be proud of who you are. Stand up for yourself. And as I said earlier, little girls, you can be anything you want to be. Don't let anybody tell you you can't, because you can. Live your dreams. Don't give up your dreams. Go for the sky.
Going to the questions here from the audience. Grace Campbell says, what supports do you use to keep you going every day? So starting in grade 7, I actually became an amateur boxer, and I've used that every single day for my outlets. So there's a gym over in North Dartmouth called Tribal Boxing. It is ran by an Indigenous woman named Bridget Stevens. And if you do not see me active online, I am in the gym every single day. And that is where I release all of my frustrations, any pain, everything is I've learned to just channel it into the art of boxing. So I found something that I can go to. If not, the beautiful thing about Nova Scotia is we're surrounded by water, and water's life. So if I'm not at boxing, if I'm not in the community, I am by the water. And I use those moments, and I don't feel guilty for having those moments because I need them in order to be balanced. Other people will tell you otherwise, but to me, if I'm going to ever show up myself in the strongest way, I need to make sure that I have those things that keep me balanced. So don't ever feel like you can't have those moments for yourself, by yourself, if that's what you need. Me, that's what I need. I need time to reset, especially as an Indigenous woman and a Black woman. I don't feel like I get a break ever. I'm expected to brush a lot of things off and still move forward. You know, 10,000 children, that's a lot. And those are all my relations. Those are my connections. So that could have been me. I have my great aunts and uncles who all went through residential schools. My grandmother was a part of that. So that could have been me. I could have not been sitting in front of you guys. And then Black Lives Matter movements and police brutality. And so it's like, if it's not one thing, it's the other. And so selfishly, or selflessly, not selfishly, selflessly, I take time for myself. I've reconnected with my culture where when I realize when I'm emotionally drained, I'll smudge. I will do all that I need to do to reconnect with myself. And that's really what keeps me going every single day. Anna Kwan, sorry. What are some everyday things all women can do to support Black and Indigenous women to work towards their dreams and goals? You have to make space for them. And when I say make space for them, I don't mean make a position for them where they're still under this hierarchy system of being below someone. That's not what I mean by making space. It's to feel like you're not threatened by the goals and the dreams that our Black women and Indigenous people have. It's almost, if you think of our water protectors and the fight that they had with Alton Gas, that was a goal, that was a dream for them to protect that. And we had to make space for that. But then we had to selflessly look at it and say, they're not fighting for themselves. They're fighting for all of us, for all of our children, because we need fresh water. So when things like this happen and you see that Indigenous people and Black people are fighting for something, you have to open your perspective and identify, why do you automatically think a certain way when you see a Black woman standing up against something? You have to unlearn whatever that first initial thought that came across your head. And that's what is so important about unlearning, relearning, and applying. Is the education system taught us one perspective. So as children, and everyone who has children, they are a blank slate. They learn each and every day through their own personal experiences, what is in front of them, what do they see, and things like that. So when we shift that and only teach them one perspective, I understand why this is a battle that we're all fighting against. I understand why moderate livelihood seems like such a threat, but the Indian Act permitted or forbid Indigenous people to be able to sell anything up until 2014 under the Indian Act. So I understand why we're in the situation that we're in. And that's the first thing that everyone else has to do. They have to understand, why do they think that way that they think, and then challenge that, move forward. And then that's the way, create the space and be okay with something going against what you've been taught your whole life.
Yes, I agree 100%. And what you were talking about is making time for yourself. Politics is a very busy role, and you deal with all kinds of people with all kinds of ideas and questions and perspectives, but we have to remember to take time to look after ourselves. I enjoy reading, and I also enjoy writing. I want to write down all of the issues I've had since I was little right up until now. All the name calling and all the teasing and going through school, not really being able to identify with who I was. As a woman, I'd like to learn more and teach more about unconscious bias, because that's something that, even though we've had, experiences as a Black woman, as an Indigenous woman, there are people out there that, like you were saying, that have a little box they put Black people in and Indigenous people. And sometimes you don't even realize, as a person without color, that sometimes the things that you're thinking are not necessarily the true things. Like you can't say, you know, walk into a room and say, welcome, madams, sir. You have to think outside of the box. There may be somebody that doesn't identify with madam or sir.
Yeah.
And it's the same with being Black and Indigenous. Sometimes they keep us in a box and this is what we're supposed to do. And I'm glad that I'm able to represent Black people and have a perspective that maybe, you know, you don't realize what you're saying or what you're doing, but I am a voice and I like to speak up. And I think it's important. And not only that, as I was saying before, you need to represent, you need to bring people along with you on the journey. You can't just make it on your own. You need to take people with you. And a lot of times we don't realize as Black and Indigenous people, actually, I shouldn't be speaking for you, but especially as Black people, we can't just keep rising and rising and expecting to get ahead. You have to reach down and bring somebody up with you, give them a lift up, let them know your experiences. You know, it's busy, but it's not that bad. And you get to meet people and, you know, you just need to share the experience. Don't let anybody tell you you can't get into politics. I had no experience in politics, but I've learned and I'm still learning to this day. And it's a wonderful experience. Busy? Yes, as you said, you know, you have to deal with a lot of issues, but you know, I am a people person and I enjoy the job.
Nice. We have a few more questions here. Anonymous says, so well spoken, Natteal Wilalin. What are some ways men can amplify and celebrate all of the success and contributions that women provide each and every day? I think that really goes back to understanding the privilege that you have as women, as men in this society, as a patriarchy society. This is what we're living in, and women are slowly beginning to find their voice and find their strengths. And you have to then use your voice to amplify their voices. If there's no women in the room, make sure you mention women. If there is only one, please use that opportunity to say, I see you. Thank you for being here. We have to wrap up soon. I just want to go through the questions here. What does International Women's Day mean to you? It's a day to celebrate interconnectedness. I feel like with International Women, that means us all. And I think in those moments, we have to celebrate the ability to be interconnected and find the strengths of each individual woman in their own background and perspectives.
And it's a way to actually open up the conversation as well.
Yeah.
Women supporting women, men supporting women. It just brings a focus to the challenges and the celebrations that women have today.
Yeah, exactly. So unfortunately, we are running out of time. We have to move to the next segment, but Wilalin and for everything and for allowing me to have this space with you today. And thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate everything you said. And I can't wait to hear more about these community stories and meet up with you at another time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
For that very interesting and thoughtful conversation. You heard us tease it earlier, but now is the time for our wellness break. So I would like to turn it over to Fantanesh Tamza from Blue Nile Massage Therapy, who's going to guide us through a head, neck, and shoulder self-treatment, followed by some deep diaphragmatic breathing. If you'd like to join in and that's something that you feel would be calming to you, please stay tuned. If not, feel free to do whatever is necessary for you to take a little break, rest, and we will be back in roughly 12 to 15 minutes to continue with our story spotlights and a panel discussion. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I hope you can see me. My name is Fantanesh Tamza and I'm the owner of Blue Nile Massage and Wellness. Happy International Women's Day. I wish I was there with you all in person, but I'm so glad to be here virtually. I have twin toddlers, so you might hear them in the background, but it's never the wrong time to do a little wellness check and a little self-care check. I just want to quickly say I was so inspired by everyone who spoke. And I just love how we all kind of collectively as women just kind of said, you know, enough is enough. It's time for me to claim my portion of rest and self-care. And I'm so excited to have you all here. We're going to definitely have some visitors. I wanted to do a head, neck, shoulder, and deep diaphragmatic and hand sequence because I know now we're always typing and we're always texting and we're in our phones. A lot of us are working from home, so these muscles are usually the ones that get most affected. I'm a registered massage therapist, and so these are areas that we work on a lot. So when you're ready, we're gonna do a little shoulder warm up. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna shrug our shoulders. If you guys want to join me, we're just gonna warm our shoulders up. You're not gonna undress me. No. We're gonna shrug our shoulders up and down, up and down. Let's shrug your shoulders. Do a quick little warm up. And you can do this at your desk. You can do this anywhere. Hey, you want your book? Look at this. You want your book? And then we're gonna warm up our wrists, warm up our hands. You wouldn't believe he was quiet for the last half an hour. You want a banana? Can I give you a banana? There you go. There, let me banana. We're just gonna warm up our hands, warm up our shoulders. And then when you're ready, we're gonna start with the left shoulder. So we're gonna relax the left arm. We're gonna take our right hand and squeeze the left trap muscle. So squeeze it to the point where you definitely feel the tension. And then we're gonna bring our right ear to our right shoulder. And you should feel a pretty intense stretch here. You can hold this for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever feels comfortable for you. And this is an incredible release for our traps. And if you can imagine, when we're working at our desk, we're always kind of like this. When we're driving, we're always like this. So to have our traps relax and to really provide this release is so beneficial for long-term muscular health. And then we're going to grab the right shoulder with our left hand, squeeze your trap muscle, and then bring your left ear to your left shoulder. And then what we're gonna do, this is how we multitask, right? What we're gonna do is we're going to bring our chin down into our chest. Come on, buddy. You want your chair? We're going to bring our chin down to our chest. And then we're really going to stretch the muscles in the back of our neck. You want an apple? There you go. And then as you're sliding your chin down, you can roll your shoulders in and kind of round your back. And you should feel this stretch all the way down your spine. You can hold it, and then we're going to go the opposite direction. So head up, shoulders back. We're going to really curve the spine. And one more time, we're going to round in. Round your shoulders, curve your spine, tuck your chin. One more time. Really extend your shoulders back, put your head up. Curve that spine. One more time, opposite direction. This is really good at re-educating our spine and our posture. And then right back the other way. So again, you can do these at your desk. You can do these when you're driving, if you're taking a little break. Another really good one is for our hands. So we're gonna make sure we warm our wrists up. And just shake your hands out. Rotate your wrists. For all the typers, all the texters, we really need to take care of our hands. As a massage therapist, my hands are everything, so I'm really, really mindful about taking care of my hands. And then we're going to come into a prayer position, and then we're going to push down. And this really stretches the inside of your hands, your palms, your fingers. I just want to say too, I have 3 kids. I have an 11-year-old boy, and then I have 1.5-year-old twins. And having a daughter really ups the parenting game, especially as a mom. We have a huge responsibility to our daughters, and I really felt that as soon as I had her. Then we're going to switch our hands the other way. Palms, the back of our palms facing each other. And then we're going to push up. And this stretches the back of our palms. This stretches the back of our palms. I appreciate your patience, guys. Multitasking is just what we do over here. This one is really good. Again, you can do this at your desk. You can do this seated when you're driving, whatever feels best for you. And then we're going to bring our palms out, push back with our opposite hand along our fingers. This stretches our forearms, our palms, those really achy wrists and hands. And then we're going to do the same for the other hand. Another really good tip for your hands and your wrists. Anytime you go to the washroom and wash your hands after you use it, finish with a cold water rinse. What the cold will do is it'll help take away any inflammation, any achiness, any soreness in the wrists and in the hands and in the joints. That's a really simple home care tip. And now we're going to finish off with some deep diaphragmatic breathing. What we're going to do for this segment is I'm going to get everyone to place their hands on their belly. And I'm going to get you to breathe in deeply to your belly. Fill your belly all the way up. And then exhale, nice and loud. Again, fill your belly up, push your hands away. Exhale until your belly is completely empty. One more time, feel your belly all the way up. Feel your hands be pushed out through the air in your stomach. This is really good to help reduce stress. And exhale until your belly is completely empty. Then we're going to place our hands on our ribs. And I'm going to get you to inhale deeply. Fill your ribs all the way up. And then exhale until your ribs are completely empty. And then we're going to inhale all the way. Expand your ribs, push your hands all the way out with your ribs. And then exhale until your ribs are completely empty. Inhale one more time. Fill your ribs all the way. And then exhale until your ribs are completely empty. I feel calmer already, guys. And then we're going to place our hands on our chest. Going to get us to inhale deeply. Fill up our chest completely with air. And then exhale until there's no air left in your chest. Another deep breath in. Make sure you're pushing your hands out with your chest, with all the air that's filled in there. Then exhale. That's beautiful. Then inhale one last time. Fill your chest all the way up. Push your hands out with your chest. And then exhale. And this time I want you all to take a deep breath in through your nose. And when you feel like you can't take any more air in, open your mouth and inhale through your mouth. It should be like you're sealing the lid closed. And then exhale. And through your nose until you're at your capacity. And then open your mouth and inhale. Exhale. Inhale through your nose a final time. Open your mouth and inhale one more time. And then exhale. Thank you all for your patience, all these little interruptions, but I truly value what's happening here today. Happy International Women's Day to everyone. I see a comment here. Thanks for understanding. Hope you got some good tips for when you're at home working from your desk or when you're driving. All these stretches and deep breathing techniques are super accessible. And, you know, kudos to all the women. Special shout out to all the moms who just get it. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. Hope we can connect. Again, I'm with Blue Nile Massage and Wellness, and I hope to see you all very soon.
Welcome back, April speaking. I'd like to introduce you now to our Story Spotlights project. The Story Spotlights is an interactive program that invites you to get to know local leaders and projects. These stories speak to the complex relationship between gender inequality and systemic barriers created by ableism, racism, and other forms of oppression, while exploring creative community-led solutions to these issues. I'd like to highlight 3 specific Story Spotlight projects today. First, Shakira Grant of Changes Brewing Collective. The Changes Brewing Collective advocates for racial inclusion in the craft beverage industry through collaborations, education, and community outreach. Already this year, the Changes Brewing Collective is offering several free stays to BIPOC-led organizations and community members at their soon-to-open Birchtown retreat, promoting rest and community care. They have taught scientific and marketing skills to youth through their beverage creation workshops. They have led discussions surrounding the importance of Africville, highlighting the need for BIPOC organizations and solidarity in the fight against racism. They have explored the history of women in brewing through their social media accounts. And they've still found time to collaborate with North Brewing Company to launch their Deep Roots Brew, dedicated to the long history of Black folks brewing, with proceeds going to workshops and community outreach initiatives. In a recent social media post, they called on their community saying, quote, "We hope to see more people of color voices valued in all spaces and that their life experiences are heard and not overlooked. Do your part in whatever way you feel most comfortable to help uplift Black voices and the voices of BIPOC members to create an equitable playing field. Our goal is to uplift others and find fulfillment in helping to create a space that all people deserve to be in, regardless of race or sexual orientation." The second Story Spotlight project that I'd like to highlight today is the Nova Scotia League of Equal Opportunities Not Without Us project report and their fact sheet on women with disabilities. In 2018, the Nova Scotia League for Equal Opportunities hosted a first-person discussion on the gaps faced by disabled women and children when facing violence. The discussion highlighted that women and girls are often challenged when it comes to being empowered and feel more isolated than included and equal. Challenges that are only amplified for those with a disability. NS-LEO partnered with Easter Seals Nova Scotia to further explore these issues by listening to disabled women who experience domestic violence and the organizations providing supports and services. It was determined that there were little to no supports available to escape the cycle of domestic violence when it is experienced by a disabled woman or child. The results of these community conversations was the Not Without Us project and report. There are many reasons this report is so important. Women with disabilities experience a high incidence of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, a problem veiled by disability isolation, and this danger has only been amplified during COVID. According to a recent Statistics Canada survey, the rate of violent victimization for women living with disabilities is 137 of every 1,000 people, which is more than double the rate of that for able-bodied women at 65 in every 1,000. Women with disabilities living in rural areas are at greater risk and have the least amount of supports and services available. Organizations that provide supports for women experiencing domestic violence have little to no experience or understanding of disability, and they are often inaccessible. This stigma surrounding disability also exists in medical interventions and policing. There's a limited understanding of the cultural needs and other intersections of identity which influence the needs of women facing violence. Women with intellectual disabilities, neurodiversity, and many other disabilities may require support to navigate these systems that are created to help. The most inescapable reality for women with disabilities is poverty. The median employment income for a disabled woman is less than half that of a disabled man, which is still significantly less than the able-bodied population. Home care services cannot be provided in transition housing forcing people to choose between essential services and their safety. Accessible transportation and affordable, accessible housing options are extremely limited, so a person seeking to leave a dangerous situation may need to wait years. Responsibility for caregiving is overwhelmingly assigned to women, which is typically unpaid or underpaid work. And on a personal note, as I was doing the research for this presentation, I tried to think of a single disabled adult woman I know who has not faced some sort of violence. Unfortunately, I couldn't come up with a single name. So I encourage you all to read further on the Nothing Without Us project report to hear some of the solutions that they suggested for this currently bleak situation. The third Story Spotlights project that I'd like to highlight today is Renee Boudreau, the founder of the Elevate and Explore Black Nova Scotia. Renee Boudreau combined her passion for travel with her desire to impact the community when she founded Elevate and Explore Black Nova Scotia, Inc. in 2019. Through Instagram, Renee promotes local Black-owned businesses, locations with historical and cultural meaning, and places she's enjoyed visiting. In addition to tours, experiences, and retreats, she is in the process of launching a new website that will highlight things to see and do within the province, upcoming events, and even a Black business directory, with many more plans in the future. Renee says, "It is our hope that if more people see themselves represented, they may be more inclined to want to visit. Knowing I have the love and support from the community behind me is important. Given the depth of our Black population and the rich history that has shaped our province, I believe we have the opportunity to attract more Black travelers to the province and provide them with safe and informative travel experiences while here. While the aim is to attract more Black travelers, I also hope to encourage people from all backgrounds to elevate and explore our beautiful province as well." If you want to explore any of these three projects for yourself, please keep an eye on the Halifax Regional Municipality YouTube channel in the coming days. Thank you for listening to our Story Spotlight project.
Thank you, April. I can't wait to learn more about these community stories. And now I would like to introduce you to Haneen El-Normeh to join us as a moderator for our next discussion, which will be a panel conversation. I have the pleasure of working with Haneen on the Women's Advisory Committee. I have the pleasure of being on this committee with her. And the committee is comprised of council and residents, and it was created in 2019 to support gender inclusive municipality and to provide advice to council on matters that relate and are relevant to the municipality mandate. Haneen is a member of the HRM Women's Advisory Council, as well as a student at Dalhousie. Thank you and welcome, Haneen.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddard. The current housing situation has been an incredibly prevalent and present issue for many individuals in Halifax and Nova Scotia more broadly in the past year. It is not surprising that during the pandemic, the lack of access to safe housing has impacted the most marginalized members of our community. During this panel, we would like to address on how these diverse communities have been impacted, with panelists who have a focus on working with women, gender diverse people, racialized persons, people with disabilities, Indigenous people, the African Nova Scotian community, newcomers, immigrants, and migrants, as well as people from the 2S LGBTQ+ community. Now allow me to introduce some of our exceptional panel today. And I'll start first with my own MLA, Susie Hansen. Susie Hansen was elected as the MLA for Halifax Needham in August of 2021. Born and raised in Halifax's North End, Susie is a grassroots organizer, community leader, and mother of 7 beautiful children. She is the NDP spokesperson for housing, immigration, early childhood, and education portfolios. In addition, Susie sits on several committees of the House as the voice for the NDP. In 2016, Susie won a seat on the Halifax Regional School Board for Districts 5. Susie worked with Phoenix Youth Programs as well for 9 years, supporting youth and community. With family ties to Africville, Susie supports various initiatives throughout the riding and the African Nova Scotian community, raising her voice in celebration, protest, and song. Welcome, Susie. Thank you. Next, Monique Fong Howe is originally from Beardy's and Okemasa's Cree Nation in Saskatchewan. She presently resides in Halifax, Nova Scotia with her life partner, Tom. Together, they have 7 children and are currently raising 3 of their grandchildren. Monique is the cultural support worker with the housing team at the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center. Her role includes providing support to Indigenous clients by offering smudging and other traditional practices. One other role will be connecting with other housing teams within HRM who are working with Indigenous communities to offer cultural support to their clients. Welcome, Monique, as well. Next, I'll be introducing Denise John, who is also a Mi'kmaq woman from Conn River, Newfoundland. She is a women's traditional dancer and is very much involved with her community. She presently resides in Chipuktuk, Halifax. She has been a tribal police officer in her community for 9 years. Denise also works as a victim support navigator and leader of the blanket exercise at the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center in Halifax. She provides a lot of support to women who experience any type of violence, including providing them with cultural services and help in navigating these resources and support. Denise believes that every woman is sacred and is entitled to immense support. Denise aims to provide these supports to them in whatever way she can through her work. Next, I will be introducing Sarah Landry. Sarah is the street outreach worker with Out of the Cold Community Association, which provides low barrier, people-centered support rooted in anti-oppressive and harm reduction practices. Sarah has a certificate from Thompson Rivers University in Social Services and is working on an undergraduate degree in Law, Justice, and Society at Dalhousie University. Sarah previously worked at the ASIM Association for Women and Children and the Salvation Army Center of Hope, giving her a broad understanding of the shelter system in Halifax. Sarah is a social justice-oriented individual and brings a harm reduction, anti-oppressive lens into her outreach work. Finally, I'll also be introducing Arti Arungam. She goes by the pronouns of she, her, and they, them. Arti is an international graduate student in the Women and Gender Studies master's program at SMU, St. Mary's University. Arti's research examines the housing experiences of racialized international students. She's a 3rd-generation Tamil migrant who was born and raised in Malaysia on the lands of the Tuman and the Jakun Orang Ulu Indigenous communities. They work as the Youth 2SL LGBTQIA+ newcomer coordinator at the YMCA Greater Halifax Dartmouth Center for Immigrant Programs. Arti is dedicated to nurturing respectful communities with an emphasis on reciprocity and sustainable future. And finally, we do have a final panelist who unfortunately isn't able to be with us, but she has done us the kind service of recording her messages. And so we'll be listening to that after her answers. Jen Powley is this final panelist. Jen is a woman with a disability who advocates for the rights of young people with disabilities to live independently instead of being cared for in senior homes. She ran for District 7 downtown in the last municipal election. And now that I've introduced our esteemed panel, thank you everybody for being here. I'll be delving right into the questions. First, I'll be asking a question of Jen Powley. And so the question here is, we are hearing a lot of stories lately about persons with disabilities experiencing significant barriers like lengthy wait lists in accessing housing. How might we consider the intersection of gender and disability when addressing the housing crisis?
There are people who are non-binary who are disabled. Imagine having to deal with both accessibility and gender dysphoria. They do not really fit into either of the 2 standard types of shelters. I think they should be allowed to use whatever shelter they feel safest in. There's already too much violence against them. Maybe the shelters need to develop a current database of what shelter is accessible and how, as well as maintain a current database in real time of what shelter has beds available. Many people with disabilities do not use wheelchairs. This is often forgotten. A shelter will not be able to provide adequate housing for all people, but if you ask what an individual needs and are receptive to the answer, something might be able to be worked out. Your specific needs as a person with a disability will differ, and shelters need to be flexible enough to accommodate that. If the shelter is not wheelchair accessible, there are government programs that will help them to become accessible, whether it be through the front or, if needed, an alternative entrance. Shelters should have a portable ramp if not accessible. They are only a couple of $100 and can be used to get a person in a wheelchair or scooter in. A portable ramp is not adequate to get a person to a second story, but it can get them through the door. It may require some elbow grease or strong volunteers, but it is better than being outside. There is a huge wait list for people with intellectual disabilities trying to access group homes. The same sort of waitlist exists for people trying to access nursing homes where they house people with severe physical disabilities. The difference is that if you are severely physically disabled, you are usually left in hospital until a nursing home bed becomes available.
Thank you, Jen. Now we'll be moving on to our next question for Sarah Landry. Sarah, can you speak to the differences between affordable housing and houselessness? What are some innovative approaches to each of these issues?
Well, affordable housing is one of those terms that has a lot of different definitions, but in the housing kind of sector, the general accepted definition is any housing that costs 30% of your income. And so it's important for everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, how much money you make, for you to be able to afford your house. So this 30% mark is, what banks use to calculate mortgages, and, what financial advisors say you can afford where you live if you spend 30% of your income on your rent or your mortgage or whatever. And so this impacts everybody, and it's no secret that the cost of housing is rising astronomically. And so it's creating a gap between cost of housing and wages. This gap creates a lot of pressure on society as a whole to kind of maintain a stock of affordable housing, to maintain people in homes. And so you think of the average rent price right now for a one bedroom is like $1,400, closer to $1,500. And so in order for somebody to be able to afford a one bedroom apartment, you need to make $30 an hour or $62,000 a year, which is, a sizable income. Most people would say that's a fairly sizable income. And so that creates quite a bit of pressure in general. And I've heard it described, poverty described as a pressure cooker before. So any sort of pressure that society as a whole feels, anybody in poverty, anybody who is marginalized or discriminated against feels that pressure tenfold. So we think of somebody who makes minimum wage, $13.35 is a far cry from $30 an hour. If you work full time at a minimum wage job, you can afford an apartment that's $640.80. And so that's a huge difference between those numbers. So affordability of housing is it affects us all. That pressure is there for us all. But like I said, poverty is a pressure cooker. And so anybody experiencing poverty, which we know statistically women are faced with poverty, and gender diverse folks, and all of our marginalized people groups experience poverty at a higher level. And so that pressure is increased tenfold. And the experience of homelessness is very much different than a money issue. There's so many barriers, and I could, spend our whole time talking about the lived experience of homelessness and what folks face. But the reality is that it's bleak, it's rough, and it's soul sucking to not have a place to live. And innovative approaches, I've got good news and I've got bad news. We know what we need to do. We know exactly how to solve homelessness. We need affordable places to live. The gold standard of housing right now is called the housing first model. You give someone a house and then you meet their needs. That's it. It's very simple. The bad news is that we already know this, and it really just takes implementation. We just need to do it. And it takes significant political will and significant public buy-in. And that's where we're at right now. We need those things for this to happen.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That is an incredibly holistic answer. Susie, now I'll be asking you a question specifically regarding to housing. African Nova Scotians face very unique circumstances and many systemic barriers, such as anti-Black racism. Can you share some reflections from your work as a community member and now as a member of the Legislative Assembly?
So you said it best. It's not unique. I mean, it's unique for those that don't understand. But it is not unique, and it is something that us as African Nova Scotians, we face daily, regardless of what's going on around us. We continue to be resilient and work hard and do the things that we need to do because that's instilled in us. But it's unfortunate that families and people of color are judged based on the color of their skin, regardless of whether it's housing, health, and all the other attributes of society. What I will say, as an African Nova Scotian, what we face as tenants, what we face as people who buy homes, what we face as someone who's even trying to get a loan at a bank, is extremely troubling. And we also need to understand that we have to examine the way that policies are created, and we have to look at things in a way that changes the way that we create legislature. So my hope and my thought is that as an MLA in this position, that we can dismantle a number of legislative policies that continue to hold down our African Nova Scotian communities and people in those communities, so that we can, start seeing some equality through the many facets of our society. But as housing, as we said, there is challenges. As an African Nova Scotian, when we're a tenant and a landlord, is not doing the work that they need to do. I mean, we do advocate on behalf of ourselves, but sometimes there could be a stigma behind that. And that also hinders us moving forward, whether we want to get another home somewhere, is because there are preference, right? So sometimes we don't always want to ripple those waters, because we understand that it's just as hard to be able to apply for a home or to get another apartment. And that goes the same with housing. When we go to purchase a home, we go into banks, and sometimes banks look at us based on the color of our skin and not based on the quality of the information that they have forward. And not all banks do this, but we do notice this, that it is a thing that happens. We don't always get the right opportunities that we should, based on the fact that we are African Nova Scotian or the color of our skin. And as well, whether we want to sell a home. I mean, there's been some studies that show that a Black person that wants to sell a home may get a less price because of they're selling their home, and maybe the community that they're in doesn't want to accept them, or are not wanting to move into a Black person's home. So there's a lot of challenges that we need to break those barriers, and I think it comes down to policy and legislature and how we dismantle those pieces.
Thank you very much, Susie. Thank you for that answer. Now I'll be moving on to Monique and Denise. Can you tell us the story of how houselessness and housing insecurity is impacting urban Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse people in Halifax, and what kind of supports are actually available to them?
Okay, I'm going to start. First of all, thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. I spoke to a client and asked her perspective on being homeless and about the support she receives at the Friendship Center, and she gave me permission to share some of this information. Being homeless doesn't make me feel good. Being homeless is not good. I get more help through the Friendship Center than anywhere else. I am accepted here because I'm Indigenous. Staff don't judge me, and they don't talk down to me. Many organizations turn their back on me because I'm Indigenous. They think that other organizations on my First Nation band could help me. So they give me a hard time when I'm seeking their services. If I didn't get help from the Friendship Center, I would be on the street. And because I'm vulnerable, I won't be surviving too long. The place where I'm at now makes me feel safe, and I am with other women who have been through what I've been through. The staff here are caring and understanding. I have gone to other places I've never felt safe. I learned important life skills here, like how to negotiate healthy relationships and boundaries. I feel supported, and I feel like I'm getting my life back. I was so impressed with her and her story. It makes me feel really good that she feels trustworthy to share her story with me. Some facts about the Indigenous population in Halifax: we've grown over the years to between 20 and 25,000 Indigenous people living in Halifax, and that's probably a lot more. Indigenous people come to Halifax for various reasons. For example, to attend school, to be closer to health and mental health specialists, to gain employment. And some don't realize it's much harder to find affordable housing, or plans fall through with friends that they were going to stay with. Sex is often exchanged for a place to stay, sleep, or to get food. People take advantage of our women and our girls and gender diverse groups who are away from their families, for they do not have the same support, and they are vulnerable. For some, they end up having to go back to their community. And some of us know many of our communities are facing the same challenges with lack of housing. Some of the other challenges that Indigenous people face: we need more housing for youth who are living with mental health challenges and addiction. We need safe housing for our Two-Spirit community and our aging community. So what's available to them? The Friendship Center has over 50 programs including program for youth, housing, mental health and addiction support, general education program to help people prepare to write GED or complete their grade 12, pre-university education, parenting support, the Mi'kmaq Child Development Center, Direction 180, Mainline Needle Exchange, Jordan's Principal, who supports children and families. The whole idea around the Friendship Center, having so many programs, is a holistic approach to community wellness. We cover all aspects of a person's life, their spiritual, mental, physical, and emotional well-being. We have elders like Elder Deb today that you met, and Teresa, and other cultural support staff who provide cultural safety and awareness. In some ways, the Friendship Center becomes a home away from home. When I came here from Saskatchewan, was the first place I went to. I got sober with the help of the Friendship Center. I've been sober over 25 years. They gave me my first job. They've been there for me, and I know that they've been there for many other women as well. Our housing team includes 13 staff members who cover a variety of areas. 3 staff members who make up the criminal justice team, Alicia, Arlie, and Brittany, assist clients who are involved with the criminal justice system or who are being released from the local provincial institution. A family ICM, Abby, who works directly with families and women who are in our safe house. Abby is a strong advocate for women who are involved with child protection services. We have 2 housing support workers, Bailey, and we have a new girl coming on lines shortly, who work with the lower acuity clients, and Robin and Kendall work with our higher acuity clients. We have a triage worker, Clayton, who facilitates all of our intakes and manages our wait list. A new transitional housing coordinator who will be managing Sage House, which will be for women and families. Brittany also manages our safe house as well. The Diamond Bailey housing unit is under construction right now and will be a multi-level housing support with wraparound services within the building. Housing support worker Caitlin, who works out of a sub office in Cape Breton, and my position, which is the cultural support. I work with anyone who are of our clients or potential clients who would like to smudge or talk. This way the clients feel safer with our services and helps them relax. It is not easy coming into our space and saying that they're homeless and saying that they need help. In the new year, I'll be reaching out to other housing teams throughout the HRM and offering support to those Indigenous clients that they are working with. And most importantly, Megan, our housing manager, who manages and offers support to us and helps us solve problems. There's many times we're sitting around as a group trying to figure out where we can find housing for someone or find a place for them to stay, and just caring about them. It means so much when someone hears that you love them and that you want to help them. We can always count on her to help us help our clients. Pam, our Executive Director of Friendship Center, who advocates tirelessly to support and secure funding so our community members have a place to live. Thank you for all that you have done. You are truly a role model to many of us Indigenous women. I also want to say that I do this work for my family. Our daughters, Jody, Megan, and Emily, our granddaughters, Kalia, Peyton, and McKaylee. That's what keeps me going, because I need to ensure that they have a place to live. And I want them to see powerful women as well. And I just want to end off by saying our Indigenous women are creative, resilient, and beautiful. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Brenda, for that. Denise, do you have anything else you want to add?
So as my role at the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center, I have been so honored to be working alongside with Monique and the housing team. A lot of times, when we are collaborating with our women or our community members, they already have so many barriers going against them. First, a lot of our Indigenous women or men, because you're Indigenous, you again have that struck against them. When at the Friendship Center, we meet them where they're at. We provide that wraparound services for them, a holistic approach as our medicine wheel. And a lot of our Indigenous community members, when they come in, again, like Monique say, it's a lot of shame that comes along with being, when you're saying that you're homeless. With our team at the Friendship Center, we have a very unique community and very strong community where we put our community first. We look at, what is needed in our community, and we know when it comes to our Indigenous women, is 3 times more likely to be very vulnerable to violence. And human trafficking is something that we feel that is the hub in Halifax. The basic needs for our women that are on the streets is very needed, where we have to provide them support. Housing is very critical in that. A lot of times there's not enough supports for them that meet them where they're at. They have a lot of unique needs where they, mental health and addictions. They may not be ready to, to speak about their trauma. They're already in that survival mode where they don't feel that you are accepted, or you're going to be, or you're judged because of the color of your skin. So with the Friendship Center, we have many, we're working on programs, and which is, like Monica said, our fourplex, which was set up to a wraparound service for our women with children escaping violence. We're working with Nova Scotia Native women. With the Jane Powell Center, we have a Sage House that's there for basic need for women that are in the sex trade or being exploited. Our Diamond Bailey, and we have a place in Waverly. These are all models that is as a holistic approach, because our community members, we know by working with our community what they need. And, you know, the housing crisis since the pandemic has been, is very stressful for our team, because a lot of our people are on the streets. And we feel that, I know with our women, is a lot of concerns for their safety, especially our women that are very vulnerable. We know in our culture, our women are very sacred. You know, we are the life givers, we have knowledge, we're the protectors of our water, of our land. We have so many resilient women in our communities. They're all across Chibuktuk. But there are many women that have fallen through the cracks, that don't have access to health, to mental health, to addiction. The wait list to get mental health is Tarsley. Housing is critical. They may not feel safe to go to a lot of our shelters because they don't feel that they're accepted there or they're judged. So they go on the streets, and that's where we feel they're very vulnerable. One of our women, guy, is right now missing, and my prayers go to her. And a lot of our women that are very vulnerable are somehow taken away from us. And I want to say that housing and homelessness is very critical in that part where our women feels very vulnerable. So I want to thank you for having me on the panel. Monica spoke a lot about the housing programs there, and my role is to support them in that role, provide that cultural support, but to navigate through different organizations that can help us. So there's a lot of teamwork that goes beyond the scenes, and we can't do none of this without our ED being the backbone of our community. So you know, she's on the ground. She when she's on vacation, she's not vacationing, because her community she cares about deeply, and we all care about our community members. And the housing crisis and homelessness is something that we are working tirelessly to overcome. And you know, we're only touching the surface right now. We still have a long ways to go, but yeah, Wilaliok for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your answers, Monique and Denise. That was it's really wonderful to know that the amount of resources that are available in the Friendship Center is definitely an important aspect of for urban Indigenous individuals. Now, Artie, I do have a question for you. Can you tell us about some of the experiences of newcomers, immigrants, and migrants when they settle in Halifax and are looking for housing? What kind of supports are available to them?
Thank you, Haneen. My grandmother came in my dream today, and she doesn't visit me very frequently. So I realized that, okay, today is a very special occasion. There must be a reason why she came. And I walked in to the space, hearing Elder Debbie saying, speak your truth. And that was reverberated during the council members' keynote speaker session earlier, where they both said that be proud of who you are, center that in your work. And I do want to take a moment today to do a bit of that. My mom always taught me that gratitude is very important. And I want to extend that to the organizers today, who are a group of amazing, strong women, non-binary folks that I've had the pleasure to work with. Thank you everyone for creating the space, and for all of you today for being here with me. With regards to your question, Haneen, I always ask which newcomer community, which immigrant you're speaking about. I've had the privilege of having access to an education and forms of organizing that has always been centered in terms of like understanding that we are settlers on the lands of Indigenous folks. And I come today here to this space of tons and gratitude for the Mi'kmaq people and for the lands that I have been able to be part of for the past 4 years. And I always encourage newcomers and immigrant communities to really think a bit about that when they're thinking about, especially around housing. It is about land, it is about ownership, it is about property. So in terms of like some of the experiences that I have been part of as a newcomer myself, and as someone who has worked within the supportive housing environment, and currently working in terms of like academic approach towards racialized international students' experiences around housing, racism is extremely prevalent.
And especially around like what Monique was saying earlier, not feeling safe in supportive housing environment or like shelter environments. And for those who are especially who are on the temporary resident visa, international students, migrant workers, they don't even have access to supportive housing and shelter. Because first and foremost, we need to know whether you're a permanent resident or not. If you're not a permanent resident, you don't have access to those services. So your only options are places like cooperative housing, which is what I'm currently very, very lucky to have had access to. And even then, those options are extremely limited. So for me, for example, I was trying for 2 years to get into a co-op. I failed the first interview. And in the second interview, I was able to be part of after like a very difficult decision for the folks in terms of like who they want to accept. And now that I'm part of that process itself, since I'm in the committees, it's been extremely hard, especially during the past 2 years, in terms of like being in this extremely powerful and privileged position to determine who gets access into the co-op that I'm part of, because I'm on the membership committee. So in terms of like specific experiences, I also ask, is this a person who has a bit of stability around socioeconomic status? There's a difference between economic migrant, there's a difference between an international student, there's a difference between migrant worker. So, and I'm not even like naming those who are coming in on a refugee status or asylum seekers. Those are an extremely, I would say 360 degrees, but it's even more like on a different planet kind of experience. And with regards to some of the supports that are available, I would say the Rainbow Refugee Association of Nova Scotia has been doing a really good job in terms of like supporting folks who are coming in as refugees persecuted based on sexual identity and gender. And they have been providing settlement support. And one of their earlier question was innovative approach, is that they have set aside a certain amount of funding just to rent a few units in a house on an ongoing basis, even if there's no tenant, so that when someone arrives, which often is on a very short notice, say if someone is arriving tomorrow, they often hear about it today or like 3 days before. So they always have a unit for someone to come and stay in a space. And that is what I would say a proactive approach, rather a reactive approach. And in terms of like some of the other services that are available, I would also like to highlight some of the amazing work that the YWCA supportive housing for young and single mothers have been doing, even though that is not necessarily something that newcomer folks or immigrant folks immediately want to have access to, but that is also something that is not contingent upon your status in Canada. So which has made it a lot more accessible. And I also always encourage when it comes to providing support to folks who needs housing, is that especially if they're an economic migrant, to always educate themselves before they land. And even when you're here and you're continuing to look for housing, I always direct them to the Affordable Housing Association of Nova Scotia's website. Look at the manuals, educate yourself, look at the what are some of the resources that are available out there, because housing in Nova Scotia, it's not easy to navigate at all. And another resource that I always direct them to is the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. In fact, tonight they're having a conversation on the intersectional experiences of women in Halifax with regards to housing. And Jen Pauli is actually going to be on that panel. So look at those things and like tell yourself and educate yourself, especially if you've had access to education and you have the economic ability to make decisions, to really understand what's happening within Nova Scotia and especially in HRM before you proceed to own property, before you proceed to rent property. And the reason why I always come from the term is exactly around what Sarah earlier said. Affordability is actually a very arbitrary term. It does not reflect the realities of folks who are on the streets, who are choosing to live on the streets because the services are not safe. In fact, if you look at the Canadian CMHA, They released a report last year on what does affordability really means, is that they themselves acknowledge that this was a random arbitrary concept that was picked up in the 70s when they were coming with the idea of like housing. So yes, look at the folks where you're working with your clients, let them inform your approach to what support they really need.
Thank you very much, Artie, for that. The work that you do is wonderful. As a refugee myself, honestly, the residency and housing issues are quite prevalent in my own experiences. So we do have 10 more minutes for general questions for the entire panel. And then afterwards, we're going to be fielding some questions from the audience. So everybody at home, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat or in the YouTube comment or whatever that may be. So next, the question that I have for the entire panel, we have 10 minutes for this. So if you could answer, can you tell us something about some of the ways that participants in today's event can actually get involved in helping those experiencing houselessness and housing insecurity? Starting with you, Artie, again.
Support your local community projects. I'm very happy to see that we actually highlighted some of them earlier today. Like, for example, I know our MLA right here has like proposed bills and acts around housing and around like affordability. Look into it, educate yourself, especially you have the ability to vote. Because trust me, that is a privilege. Even permanent residents can't vote. So forget those who are on temporary resident visas. And also look at like community organizations. Who would you like to support? And I know, like, for example, from my experience working with Shelter Nova Scotia Supportive Housing, during the pandemic, having a warm meal delivered to you during the weekends made all the difference. It really did, especially when you couldn't work because of pandemic restrictions, because of weather. And all you had access to were like McDonald's because it was the cheapest you can find. Having a homemade food made all the difference for the folks that I was working with. And also work with like folks within your community. For example, here, Denise, you're a blanket exercise coordinator. Work with community members and like make sure that you support each other's initiatives in order to extend that conversation. Because like I said earlier, centering the voices of your clients, but also your community members is extremely important because it always has to be bottom to top rather than the other way around.
And before we move on, Jen actually recorded as well an answer to this question. And so if we could play that, I think everyone at home would love to hear that.
When COVID restrictions are a thing of the past, people could visit nursing home residents, or they could contact their local politician or a political party they are a member of and emphasize how the minimum wage needs to be a living wage, and that banks need to be encouraged to give mortgages at a low rate, and that politicians need to ensure that property developers are paying their fair share and offering units at a variety of price ranges, including deeply affordable. People need to be reminded that this is their society and that they need to demand more. Although the 1% has the money, remember that every vote is equal. I know people with severe physical disabilities are housed in nursing homes. I think when it began, this was meant as a temporary fix, but it has become a permanent solution. If you need 24/7 care, a nursing home has the required staff for it to ensure someone is always on hand. 4 years ago, I made a proposal to the Department of Community Services, and to my surprise and delight, it was accepted. I provided another option to government with a shared services program. It is a formalization of what people in the community were already doing with the funding from the self-managed attendant care program. Now, Independent Living Nova Scotia is working on developing a living situation for younger adults with severe physical disabilities in the community. I was able to engineer this because I had the benefit of being from a family with the resources to buy 2 condos side by side. For most people, this is not an option, but we need to change the way we think of housing. It may not be what people typically think of when they're asked what can be done, but it is what I did, because I could. The UN declared housing a human right, but we are bent on using a profit-driven model to provide it. Maybe we need to think of housing differently and have housing provided by government, not as a personal investment.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jen, for that. Now again, Sarah, if you could touch briefly on that question as well.
Yeah, I think, there's some pretty simple ways people can get involved, check in on your neighbors, care for your community. Yeah, create the society we want to see, follow different organizations on social media and educate yourself on what others are doing and get involved. Hot meals are the most loving thing that you can do for somebody. Also put pressure on your decision makers. Tell them that we need long-term solutions. Tell them that we need to actually take this crisis seriously, and not just react, but to make a plan and to implement it. Like I said earlier, we have the knowledge, we just need to do it. So yeah, put pressure on your decision makers and care for one another.
Thank you very much. Monique and Denise, do you have any brief answers to this?
Yeah, just want to have I know there's many housing and homelessness initiatives that are, coming up because of the pandemic. Being involved with the community, informing, if you have invite us at the table, be there, because a lot of our populations in HRM, we know the rates of our Indigenous community members are very high. A lot of our community members, when they go to many shelters or housing, they don't feel like they belong. So I think a lot of these initiatives need to be culturally safe and relevant, like get some teachings or history about the Indigenous community members that you're involved with. Being culture safe, like we do the blanket exercise, talks about history of our Indigenous people across Turtle Holland. Through the pandemic, we did a lot of our own programs, having a lot of our community members go to hotels had to happen because there's not enough shelters that was available. The wait list was very long. We provide a lot of food cards, gift cards to our community members. We're always there on, doing check-ins with our community members, but we need to be involved with the conversations right at the get-go because we have very unique needs and our community members, we work very closely with our community members. So we know what works for our community members. So being involved, being at the table in those conversations is all we can be, and putting those pressures on the ones that's making those decisions, because we're going to be hitting into an area where, our people are becoming more homeless because housing right now is ridiculous for rent. So that's just,
thank you very much.
I think my comment will be about keeping it very simple and talking to people. My family always gets mad at me. My sister always makes fun of me because I talk to everybody. And I'll be getting their life story in the line at the grocery store. But I listen to them and I ask them how I can help. And, using what they say, because they know what they need, and I have that voice and I can advocate for different groups of people if they tell me how they need, what services they need. I think it's really important too, like Denise was saying, to get us involved with them. So if you want to learn about what the Friendship Center is doing, please come down and talk to us and see the programming that we have. I have this really cool idea that I want to start in the new year where we're going to invite other housing teams for lunch, just so that we can share our creativity together and share our stories together and share our solutions together. So, just give me a call and we can set up the lunch. Well, so I sound very corporate right now, but call me and we'll set up some lunch because it's always around food. At the Friendship Center, there's a group of us that have lunch together and we talk and we're creative. So thanks.
Best ideas come through lunch.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And Susie.
Well, I would just touch on all of the same pieces. I think our voices are valuable, right? And our voices do matter, even though sometimes we think they don't. They are extremely powerful. And so all of these other pieces, reach out to those communities, reach out to organizations that are doing great work, that are doing tireless work for our houseless community, and as well for those that need supports. But I will say, as Nova Scotians, we have to step up and make these decisions. And as politicians, we need to do better. And we know that there's a number of pieces that have been discussed today about how we should be doing better. And there's pieces that are put in place that we could be looking at to change the way we see housing in our province. And I just want to say we need to be a compassionate government. We need to be realistic about that. I will constantly be the one saying those things while we're sitting in the House, because I know that the House is the people's house and my voice is the people's voice around that table. So we need to choose society over our economy. And I think we've lost touch with that. We see this now even more so, where COVID has presented so many different facets of stresses in each of our lives. So yes, we just need to choose each other, be compassionate with each other, care more, talk to each other, be visible. And I think that that's a valuable piece to start that work moving forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you all for the wonderful answers and the wonderful input. It's been incredibly enlightening, and having you all provide this information is wonderful. Now we're just opening up the floor for any questions from the audience or from those at home.
I just wanted to add another, I forgot another two programs that are at the Friendship Center that I wanted to highlight. Is there's a Inuit programming that serves the Inuit population that's coming from the north. So Frances provides all kind of programming. They have meals together, they do crafts together, just supporting one another. And the other one is the Cultural Mentorship Program, where they have Indigenous professionals and people who help mentor younger Indigenous kids and youth. And it's a really good program. It helps our children learn about other careers that are going to be happening out there. They just get another support system besides their family. My grandchildren are a part of that program, and they have grown so much. And another thing too is be open-minded about being foster parents. My grandchildren were in foster care, and they had a really good experience. So we need more foster care professionals who will be open to engaging with the Indigenous community. I think that's really important too. We keep in close contact with the foster parents that had our grandchildren, and they are still a part of their lives, even though they haven't been in foster care for three and a half years now. So they still call them auntie, they still call them nanny, so it's really important as well for that programming to happen as well.
Thank you for adding that, Monique. That's really helpful. That's wonderful to know. And we do have another question coming in. So the question is, a lot of the language about housing can be confusing and unclear to people. Things like modular housing, to some sounds like a permanent solution, while in reality, it's only a temporary fix. Are there other terms that should be more clearly defined for the public? And how can we ensure that everyone is able to actually participate in housing conversations, and not only those who have the benefit of knowing the jargon? If we could start with you, Susie, this time.
Okay. So as we know, that language, I think it was mentioned like 1970s, that language was kind of put out there. And I mean, the people that created that language were business people, politicians, the elite. So it was created for a select few to kind of know that jargon. And I think we need to make sure that all language is made for everyone to understand. And if we don't understand it, that there's ways for us to educate each other for these pieces. We also need to make sure that it's transparent and open for everyone. So when we talk about how we can, invite other people into spaces to have these conversations, the conversation should be for everyone, not just those that are unhoused, that are in precarious housing, or those that are, at risk. It should be for everyone, our neighbors, our community members, our service providers, because we all need to work together to make sure that we all have an understanding of what this really means. When we talk about modular housing, when I think of modular housing, I think of temporary, or like up for now. But it has advanced over time, and I had to do some research on this. But it doesn't have as long of a lifespan. So when we talk about modular housing, it's not like a permanent fix, i.e. not a long lifespan. So it is about educating ourselves on what those wordings means and how that affects communities and people in communities when we say we're going to bring them into our communities, and how long it's going to be for, especially for those that need it or are going to be applying for those spaces.
Thank you, Susie. Nick?
I'm still becoming familiar with all of those terms. Research. One of the things that surprised me was how much money was available when COVID hit. And I'm thinking, why can't we use that money for housing? We need the governments to take houselessness, homelessness seriously. We need them to put their money where their mouth is. We need them to develop policies around keeping our families safe and together. We know that our numbers of our Indigenous families and children, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of our children in care. What are we going to do when all those kids graduate out of care, age out of their care? There's going to be a lot of youth who are going to be looking for supportive housing. So I think it's time to, really quit talking about what the short-term solutions are and start looking at ways of making long-term housing more affordable and available.
Thank you for that, Monique. Denise, do you have anything else to add?
Like, I'm not in the housing, but I know, like, collaborating with a lot of the housing team, a lot of our community members, they don't know how to read and write. They might not know some of these words. So sitting with our community members and our housing team is so phenomenal, where they work with them and they explain everything about them, like the application process. A lot of times you have to have an address to get income assistance. Like statistic, our community members, there's a lot of homeless population. Like, it's very, a lot of these policies need to be changed, when we're looking at income assistance. But also, when Monique talked about, our community members, like when they come to the city, a lot of time they expect, everything to be it's going to be done very easily. But the reality is, like, housing is very, is in a crisis matter, especially with the pandemic. Like having our community members on the streets shouldn't be happening. The money that's coming in through the pandemic, like Monique said, should be put into having those modules where it's harm reduction, because we know a lot of community members are suffering and struggling with addictions. They're not ready to go to treatment. Detox centers is a wait list. So we need to address those systematic barriers that puts our community members at risk and be more vulnerable. But our government, our MLAs, I'm amazed, the work that you do, putting the pressure on them to make those decisions, putting funding available where it's really, really needed, and making sure these programs are culturally safe for our community members, because it's a human right to have housing, to affordable housing, to be available for all community members in HRM.
Thank you for that, Denise. Sarah, do you have anything to add?
I would just like to, talk a little bit about what it means to be housed, like what housing is. And like, that's the main core of this conversation, right? Like, what does it mean to have a place to live? You know, somewhere that's safe, somewhere that's secure, somewhere that's permanent, somewhere where, you know, nobody can tell you to leave whenever, you know, those, it's a very basic kind of understanding, but that's what the conversation surrounds, and any sort of solution or idea that doesn't come back to people being a part of a community, and having supports around them, and having, you know, that safe, secure, permanent place to live. You know, that's really all we need to understand is that housing is a right, and everybody needs and deserves to have a place to live. And that basic understanding of what that looks like is really all we need to push for that reality.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Artie?
What I have to share is really a very common thread of what all the panelists have said, is that just about 3 months ago, I was walking with a coworker, and he looked at his left side and said, this whole row used to be public housing, and they have been demolished. This was in Bayers Road. And I remember just pausing and like standing in astonishment and thinking, why were they demolished, right? And I realized it was because of commercial investment. I understand why commercial investments are needed, but one thing that I think I would really encourage is to kind of shift the perspective from the business point of view to kind of really thinking about it as housing as a right, as a community approach, and also really thinking about what it means to build communities of livable environment. And how is that going to be practical is like making sure that folks who actually need those support are being in the space and in being part of the conversation. And I was disappointed to hear that there was an initiative that's been across Canada. It's called the Build for Zero Canada. It's especially has been demonstrated to be successful in the community of Medicine Hat, but also in some smaller communities in Ontario. Nova Scotia implemented it about 3 years ago, and it fell through after 6 months. I do not know why, in 2018, I believe. And the goal of that program is to reduce, and if possible, eliminate homelessness. And it's not just general type of understanding of homelessness, but also veteran homelessness. So it really is at the core of that program is bringing together folks who are in the government, bringing together folks who are providing supportive housing, shelter organizers, but also community members, property realtors who come together and really identify immediate practical intervention or like services that have been created within the resources that we already have. But we haven't had an opportunity to develop that kind of work yet. So that's what I would like to leave with.
Thank you very much for that, Artie. Thank you all for your answers to that question. We do have a question from a participant, and I'd like to invite Vicky Levac to speak next. She'll be speaking in person. Mm-hmm.
Oh, we can hear her. I believe you're muted, Vicky.
Yeah, there we go. I'm sorry, I had trouble reaching the button. Too many buttons. Hi, my name is Vicky. Most of you all know me. So, hi, Susie. My question was about accessibility in housing, because we can build all the quote unquote affordable housing we want, which is relative depending on who you are. So I don't really like that term, but I'm going to use it anyway. We can build all the affordable housing we want, but a lot of the housing, even if you have all the money in the world, it is not accessible. Like I can't get through the door to actually like live there. So is it possible when we talk about affordable housing to mandate? You know, I would prefer if we said, okay, all affordable housing has to be wheelchair accessible because people are going to need it eventually. because you get more and more disabled as you age if you're lucky enough to have a long life. But is it possible that you would just say, okay, for the X amount of affordable housing has to also be wheelchair accessible or other disability accessible? Is that a thing we can do?
Thank you very much for that, Vicki. Does anyone on the panel feel comfortable answering this question?
I can
Susie,
answer that. Vicki, thanks for the question. I will say that I have taken, because we've had many conversations, and it's super valuable when you think about, yeah, accessibility, it is, that is the word, but I think we talked about universal builds and it being universally accessible for everyone. Because you're right, when we think about, you know, our door frames and our bathrooms and all of these pieces, eventually at some point in our lives, we're going to need to make changes. And why do that, you know, when it's needed? Why not do it all around so that everyone can have access to our homes, no matter whether they're a visitor or whether they live there or not? I think me and you need to have a conversation a little bit further about how I can present this in the House, but this is how we do these things. All of this information, and I know we've talked about this, is that the value to using your voice and using your advocacy is huge, especially when you have people that are in positions that can advocate or use their voices for that reason. So I think that is something that I would love to be able to present. And I know that our caucus has been working on a number of pieces as well. But you're right. Why not do it universally instead of just when, you know, something does happen and we need to make those changes 50 years down the road? Do it for everyone, because I mean, I'm sure I can't even reach the cupboards half the time. I would rather to have my house built the way that it needs to be built, no matter what size I am, no matter what version of my body it is, right? So thank you for that question, Vicki.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Vicki.
Susie.
Thank you very much, Vicki. And thank you, Susie, for that. And thank you to all the panelists for being here. A deep thank you to all the for your time and for all the knowledge that you provided today. It's wonderful having you. And I'm sure the resources and the issues that you've shed light on are incredibly helpful for the attendees and for HRM to be aware of, especially considering that the ongoing theme is that the policies are clear, but we need more backing for that. Thank you, everyone. And yeah, I think that's the wrapping up of the panel.
April speaking. Thank you so much, Haneen, and thank you to all the panelists for those thoughtful answers. I'd now like to introduce you to our next performer. Sue Goyette is the municipality's 8th Poet Laureate. Sue is serving a 3-year term in this role, acting as an ambassador for poetry, literacy, literature, and the arts. As part of her mandate, she will represent the municipality as an artist and an advocate for culture and community through public appearances and readings at local events and through other public presentation platforms. Sue Goyette lives in Shabuktuk, Halifax, the unceded and unsurrendered land of the Mi'kmaq peoples. She has published 8 books of poems and a novel. Her forthcoming collection is Monoculture by Gasparo Press 2020. Sue has been nominated for several awards, including the 2014 Griffin Poetry Prize and the Governor General's Award, and has won the CBC Literary Prize for Poetry, the Earl Burney, the Bliss Carman, the Pat Lower, the J.M. Abraham Poetry Award, the Relit Award, the 2015 Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia Masterworks Art Award for her collection, Ocean. She also edited the 2014 Best of Canadian Poetry Anthology and the 2017 Griffin Poetry Prize Anthology. Sue teaches in the creative writing program at Dalhousie University. Please enjoy Sue's presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for giving poetry space in this important conversation. I'm inspired and so grateful for the work the panelists are describing and knowing how systemically impossible it feels at times. I'm so grateful for your endurance and your courage and your audacity and your righteousness. And it's my privilege to be here and to offer something I've been thinking about during this turbulent and challenging and time of great potential and change. And the impact this time has been having on me, and I imagine on a lot of us. The ongoing unknowingness of this time can be pretty hard to be living along with. And I heard the panelists in some way or another name family and connectiveness and community and collectivity as important. And I've been thinking about the radical mothering it takes to have children at this time on the planet in however way they're manifesting fluidly, diversely, their own specific singularity, and the space that we advocate and protect for them. And so I thought I'd read a poem about mothers and daughters. We'd been feeding thin wafers of moonlight to our daughters. No one had warned us of the danger or the potency of this new diet. But show me a pine tree now and I'll show you one of our girls. Those cones of persistence, the sharp needles of argument, stubborn and green, green, green. Upward and outward. First they wanted kittens, now they want a clean ocean. They wore their disdain like lip gloss and flirted with the security cameras of their fears. Their talk belied their curfews and they insisted on wearing their grandmother's watches. Nothing could make them hurry. Some of us studied them and now put on our boots as if every morning is a mountain not yet tamed. We'd kept our growls on a leash for so long, when we let them loose, they kept looking back at us. Our girls taught us the right way to spoon the spilled stars. The infusion of outer space with the darker oils of our secrets made us heavy with abandon. We fell into the arms of our daughters as if we'd been lost at sea and they were the ones standing on shore to welcome us. Grass huts lit with composure. They'd built a fire, burning everything we had ever taught them. They had no choice, they explained. It was the only way they could imagine keeping us warm. Thank you so much and happy International Women's Day.
And now, as we wrap up our time together, I would like to invite Denise Schofield, Deputy Chief Administrative Office of Halifax Regional Municipality, to share some closing remarks for today's International Women's Day event. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddard. I'm grateful to be surrounded by such inspiring individuals today. Our message, Disrupt and Celebrate, certainly resonated throughout the event today. Halifax Regional Municipality is a diverse and vibrant and growing region, but as we learned today, there are many challenges, but also a great number of opportunities that lie ahead for all of us. For me, today is a day of both celebration and reflection. It's no secret that women and gender diverse peoples have historically faced greater barriers than men when it comes to actively participating in the workplace. The only way to address and overcome these barriers is to have more women in positions of leadership, providing the support and acting as role models that women need to advance their careers. It's incumbent on women to encourage, to establish, and to champion initiatives that continue this momentum and help women remove the impediments that they encounter. Something I heard recently resonated with me. Women in leadership don't take risks without sacrifice. We don't blaze trails without being scratched, and we don't shatter glass ceilings without being cut. But that doesn't stop us. We continue to be fierce and humanistic leaders. So finally, I want to extend sincere thanks to all of our panelists for their thoughtful discussion, for Natteal for your inspiring keynote address today, and to all the performers, collaborators on our virtual spotlights, and for Elder Eisen for the warm welcome this morning. Thank you, and ladies, continue to be fierce.
Thank you so much, Denise. We're so grateful that you could join us today. Thank you to everyone who tuned in today, those who asked thoughtful questions and engaged in dialogue. Please don't forget that the event is being recorded so that we will watch it again if you need to. I know I will. And it will be available on HRM's YouTube account in a few days.
April speaking. Throughout today, I kept going back to today's theme of disrupt and celebrate. So as a disabled queer mad woman living in HRM for the last 19 years, I would like to issue a challenge to the Halifax Regional Municipality. If you truly believe in the importance of resisting and amplifying the intersectional voices of women and genderqueer persons, I challenge you to embrace full transparency, beginning with the 2022 Sunshine List of your top income earners. And please disclose the percentage of women on this list. Are there any two-spirit, non-binary, trans, and genderqueer employees who appear on this list? What percentage of these top earners are racialized? How many are visibly or invisibly disabled? Show us who is truly leading when it comes to your decision-making. And while you are standing with us, we ask that you stop criminalizing homelessness and disability. Stop the violent arrests of Black and Indigenous peoples. Investigate all missing and murdered women. Stop medical gaslighting and institutionalization of disabled people. Stop the daily racial harassment on our streets and the incarceration and eugenics movements currently thriving in your institutions. It's time for you to join these amazing individuals you are celebrating today and support their efforts to make a better community for everyone. My hope is not for gender equality, but rather for true equity. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said, April. We would also like to thank the IWD Planning Group, all of our collaborators, partners, and funders. Without you, this event would not be possible. Thank you.